I do sometimes derive pleasure from being surprised. I think you could allow me a description as a fairly enthusiastic chronicler of the madness of right-wing media in this country and right-wing politics. It's important to remember they've won everything in recent years. So what is the traditional party of the right in the United Kingdom? Correct, yes, the Conservatives. Does anyone remember them? And they have more or less disappeared from political discourse. Why? Because they kept winning. Have you clocked this? You must have done. They kept winning. They've won every battle. If you were to look at the last 10 years of Daily Mail front pages, they've won every single battle, apart from the last general election, which they'd kind of given up on from months out. They've won every single battle. The stink tanks on Tufton Street even got their woman into Downing Street to introduce the economic policies that they'd spent decades claiming would make the world a better place. They've won every single battle. They won Brexit. They won the referendum. They got the austerity. They got swinging cuts to public sector spending, hitting the most vulnerable people in this country hardest. They got Boris Johnson into Downing Street, their ultimate darling, their favourite joker. Boris Johnson goes from Daily Telegraph jester to Prime Minister of these islands. They got Boris Johnson into Downing Street. They resisted the march of reality. All of those people charged with trying to remind the British public of reality and hopefully derail or dilute Brexit. They saw them off. They crushed the saboteurs. They succeeded. They won that as well. And then when Boris Johnson finally got faced the consequences of his own moral corruption and his own lies and his own disgraceful conduct, when their darling fell, they gave him £500,000 a year to write a column for the Daily Mail and replaced him with Liz Truss, who brought in all of the economic policies that they'd spent decades dreaming of. They won again. They won. They kept winning. And then Liz Truss set fire to our economy. So the Conservative Party, and I think I might be the first person to have made this observation, and if I'm not, I apologise both for the inaccuracy and the pomposity. If I am the first person to have made this observation, I apologise only for the pomposity. The Conservative Party has been destroyed by success. The Conservative Party has been destroyed by success. It has won every battle on the political battlefields of the last decade. And the reason why it has been destroyed by its success is because the public have been able to see the consequences of those victories. It doesn't matter how complete your control of the narrative is, because you own all the newspapers and you've started setting up your own television stations and you've got your friendly, tame client radio hosts. It doesn't matter how complete your control of the narrative is. The public could see the reality of Brexit, of Boris Johnson's premiership, of austerity, and, of course, most obviously, of Liz Truss's economic policies. 4 abject victories. Win, 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 win. A party destroyed by its own success. So what does the right do next? It's a tricky one, right? What does the right do next? Having succeeded, having won all of these major political battles and yet destroyed its traditional party, what on earth do they do next? Well, I've told you a million times, they either admit the mistake, that you either sit behind this microphone and say, I obviously shouldn't have supported Brexit and I shouldn't have encouraged you to do so. I'm so sorry for treating Boris Johnson like some sort of political genius crossed with a comedy god. Obviously, I should have been calling out Liz Truss and the stink tanks that inspired her from years and years. I'm so sorry for that's your choice. Or you desperately search around for a receptacle into which you can put all of those disasters, which of course were also victories, and carry on pretending that you're on the right side of history. That's all you can do. You either put your hands up and apologise and resign and give up the editorship of the Daily Mail and go off and work with, I don't know, open a llama farm in Renfrewshire, or you desperately try to find a new receptacle. That you have destroyed the Conservative Party by winning. Boris Johnson fans, Liz Truss fans, Brexit fans, austerity fans, you destroyed the Conservative Party by winning. And you removed all of the people from the Conservative Party who knew that you were destroying it. You got rid of you even got rid of Philip Hammond, the least threatening individual imaginable. You got rid of David Gauke and Dominic Grieve. You got rid of Rory Stewart. You couldn't find a home for Amber Rudd. You got rid of everybody, even vaguely competent or honest, and you were left with a choice between Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick to lead the flipping thing. You destroyed the Tory party. So what do you do? It's one of those mornings where I felt the clouds clear. As a tireless student of right-wing lies and propaganda, I was, for a while, completely baffled by what happened this morning. But that's what you have to do. So you have to now take all of the chips that you have stolen back from the British public, having gambled them all on those 4 victories, Brexit, Boris Johnson, austerity, Liz Truss. You steal all the chips back, and you're desperately trying to find a new receptacle in which to put them that allows you to pretend that you haven't been so disastrously wrong about everything that you have destroyed one of the oldest and proudest right-wing political parties in the history of the world. The history of the world. I don't think that's a hyperbole. You have destroyed it by being idiots and often by being racist. You've destroyed it. So what are you looking for now? Well, we need another receptacle. We need something else to put all this stuff in. And up pops Nigel Farage. So what do? You spend the best part of a decade treating him like the second well, no, that's not true. You spend the first half of the decade treating him like the disgusting stain upon public discourse that he is, the unshiftable skid mark upon the underpants of British public life. And then, when you've destroyed your own party, you have to change your tune. You have no choice but to either apologise and resign and spend the rest of your life doing penance on a Scottish llama farm, or you pretend that this guy is the answer to all of the problems that you have literally created. So you invite him into the studios to sit where Boris Johnson used to sit, and you treat him like a good mate, and you go out for lunch and smoke cigars together, and you write articles for newspapers, or you commission him to write articles for newspapers. You roll out so many red carpets that my hometown of Kidderminster may yet reopen one of the factories that closed there during the 1980s. And that's what is happening. So you turn Nigel Farage into the receptacle into which you put all of the wrong-headedness, all of the racism, all of the disgusting ideas, all of the cruelty that destroyed your own Conservative Party by delivering Brexit, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and austerity, and you set him up as the solution. And you call him patriotic and stick a flag in his pocket, despite the destruction that he has wreaked upon these islands, or the destruction that you have wreaked upon these islands by winning all the flipping time, by winning the referendum, by winning the elections, by winning this, by winning that, by getting your austerity in place, by getting Liz Truss into Downing Street, by getting your ludicrous economic policies actually enacted in a mini-budget. Win, 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 win. And then you end up with this guy, who you can't stop talking about. You can't stop inviting him on your programmes. You can't stop commissioning him to write articles. One bloke has even set up an entire television station as a sort of tribute act to Nigel Farage. And lo and behold, he ends up leading in the opinion polls. Well, colour me shocked. He's got the full weight of what used to be the right wing in this country before they destroyed itself by winning so many things. So they turn him into this ludicrous receptacle, and the only way they get away with it is by completely ignoring who and what he is. When The Sun described his racism in explicit terms 11 years ago, where were all the right-wing commentators complaining that he'd had a target painted on his back, or The Sun was obsessed with Nigel? When The Sun described his racism as racism in 2014, where were all the editorials asking why is The Sun obsessed with this man? Why how dare they talk racism about a racist? It's incredible to see how far we've fallen in 11 years, but I hope you'd agree I've just made perfect sense of it all. So, We find ourselves this morning contemplating a right-wing media complaining that the Prime Minister is talking about and addressing a man who currently leads him in the opinion polls. And that is the moment at which I wondered whether the madness had become complete. I saw it in the Daily Telegraph, I saw it in the Daily Mail, I heard it on some radio programmes. You are complaining about the Prime Minister addressing the man who is currently leading them in the polls directly. Why are you even talking about him at all? By the way, I'll be back on my show taking calls tomorrow, but why are you even talking about this guy at all? It's just beyond bonkers, right? Why are they talking about him? He's leading in the opinion polls, and we report when he breaks wind, we stick it on our front pages and invite him into the studio to talk about it. We have developed an obsession with the man so complete that when he sneezes, we all catch a cold. But when the Prime Minister actually starts telling a few fairly mild home truths about the bigotry and the division that he's sowing across this country, they all have a collective fit of the vapours. They clutch their pearls so hard, the twine snaps. And it is absolutely, well, hilarious, right? Why are you talking about Nigel Farage? Say broadcasters and commentators who talk about him all the time, who can interview members of his organisation without asking about the bloke that's just pleaded guilty to taking bribes from a Kremlin stooge, who talk about him definitely not being racist or any of those things without mentioning the time he took that bloke out for lunch who'd just been thrown out of UKIP for being too racist and anti-Semitic. Photographed having lunch with Nigel Farage after he'd been expelled. So I have got a question for you, but I should warn you that I think I know the answer. How can people who have treated Nigel Farage like the only story in town, and indeed the second coming for the best part now of 2, 3, 4 years, how can they possibly complain about the Prime Minister calling out the leader of what is, in the opinion polls, the main opposition party in this country at the moment? I genuinely marvel at what we're witnessing, and I cannot wait to hear your explanation. So, I mean, pick a pundit, pick an editor, pick a commentator. Why are they so scared of Keir Starmer telling a few mild home truths about Nigel Farage? Nigel Farage, of course, the big fan of free speech, who now doesn't think the Prime Minister should have free speech in this country. He'll go and tell foreign politicians that we're turning into North Korea, and then he'll claim that the actual Prime Minister of this country shouldn't say accurate things about him, shouldn't tell the truth about him. And if you don't think that he indulges in racism, then don't take it up with me. Take it up with the Sun newspaper, which made that pretty clear 11 long years ago. So, why? Surely they'd be celebrating. And I think I know the answer, but I want to hear what you think first. I think it's similar to, why do racists hate being called racist? Why didn't people in this country embrace Steve Bannon's invitation to wear the accusation with pride? Why didn't that bit work? You can see it in the Lucy Connolly case. So there is a woman who actually and actively called for violence against entirely innocent people, foreign people, and said herself, if that makes me racist, so be it. So there's someone who wears their racism with pride. What do these people do with her? They turn her into a folk hero. They invite her onto the stage at their party conference and cheer her to the rafters. Someone who has pleaded guilty to inciting racial hatred, who called for entirely innocent human beings to be burned alive because they were foreign, who owned her racism, who said, if that makes me racist, so be it. That's the bit they love. That's the bit the Daily Telegraph commentators love. That's the bit Farage loves. The pride in being racist that they are too frightened to display. So what are they frightened of today? Why are they so spooked by Keir Starmer telling a few home truths about their golden boy? That's the question, all right? That's the phone-in. 0345 6060 973. Why are these people so spooked by Keir Starmer telling a few home truths about Nigel Farage, who he hasn't even called racist? He's just pointed out the racism of some of his policies in the same way that the Sun pointed out the racism of some of his comments in 2014. So Keir Starmer has not gone any further in 2025 than the Sun newspaper went in 2014. That's an incredible moment to reflect upon. I'm mildly obsessed with it because it is such a helpful chronicler of our national decline. But why are they so freaked out, so spooked, so scared? Why is he even talking about Nigel Farage at all, who, by the way, will be back on my show next week? It is just... I don't want to say baffling, because I think we've made some sense of it. But why do you think they are so scared of Keir Starmer talking about Nigel Farage? Why is Nigel Farage, a whiny little so-and-so that he indubitably is, why is he so scared of Keir Starmer pointing out his racism when the Sun was doing it 11 years ago? What are they so scared of?